The Harrington estate sat on a quiet cul-de-sac in the rolling hills outside Charlotte, North Carolina, where the magnolia trees shaded wide lawns and the driveways curved like the backs of sleeping cats. The house itself was a three-story brick colonial with white columns and a wraparound porch that had once hosted governors and senators, but these days the only footsteps echoing across the polished oak floors belonged to the staff. On a humid Tuesday in late May, the silence inside the house felt heavier than the air outside. 10-year-old Benjamin Harrington lay crumpled on the sunroom rug, his small body curled like a question mark, eyes closed, skin clammy. Kneeling beside him was Maria Delgado, the new housekeeper who had started only 6 weeks earlier. Her uniform was still crisp, her dark hair pulled into a low knot, but her hands shook as she held something tiny, black, and slick between her thumb and forefinger. It glistened under the skylight and, impossibly, twitched. The head butler, Mr. Langford, appeared in the doorway first. "Maria, what in heaven's name have you done?" His voice cracked like a branch under snow. Before she could answer, Alexander Harrington strode in, tie loosened, face the color of ash. The CEO of Harrington Holdings had just stepped off a conference call with Tokyo when the scream reached him. "Ben." The single word tore out of him like a bullet. Maria's eyes welled. "I didn't hurt him, Mr. Harrington. I swear on my mother's grave. I was only trying to help." Alexander's gaze dropped to her open palm. Whatever she held looked alive. He recoiled. "You touched my son without permission?" She opened her mouth, but the thing in her hand moved again, and a sound cut through the room. Thin, raspy, but unmistakable. "Dad." Alexander froze. The boy who had never heard thunder, never spoken a syllable, had just said the word every specialist in the world swore he never would. Maria's tears spilled over. "He can hear, sir. He can hear." The estate had always been a fortress of quiet. Alexander had built his empire on precision, quarterly reports, hostile takeovers, and the certainty that money solved problems. Yet for a decade he had flown Benjamin to Zurich, London, and the Mayo Clinic, paying for cochlear trials, gene therapies, and experimental implants that left the boy bruised and silent. The doctors always ended with the same sympathetic shrug: profound congenital deafness, irreversible. Benjamin communicated by reading lips and the clumsy signs the staff half-learned. Most avoided him, as if silence were contagious. The gardeners spoke louder when he wandered near the hedges. The cooks left his plates at the far end of the table. Only Maria watched him the way a gardener watches a fragile seedling. She was 26, raised in a cramped apartment off South Tryon Street where the buses hissed all night. Her little brother Luis had lost his hearing to meningitis at 4. The county clinic turned them away for lack of insurance, and Luis died at 7, mouthing words Maria could no longer hear. She had come to the Harringtons to pay her mother's dialysis bills, scrubbing floors at dawn, folding tiny polo shirts with military corners. But every time she passed Benjamin lining up his Matchbox cars in perfect rows, something in her chest tightened. She began leaving gifts on the staircase: a paper airplane, a butterscotch candy, a crayon sketch of a dog with floppy ears. At first he ignored them. Then one morning the candy wrapper sat folded into a neat square beside his fleet. When she dropped a crystal tumbler and it shattered, Benjamin's shoulders shook with silent laughter, the first anyone had seen. Langford warned her in the pantry. "Mr. Harrington doesn't like familiarity. Clean the house, keep your distance." Maria nodded, but distance felt like betrayal. The trouble started on a Thursday when the azaleas were blooming. Benjamin sat on the back terrace rubbing his left ear, face pinched. Maria signed, "Hurt?" He nodded, eyes glassy. She tilted his head toward the light and saw it, a dark speck far down the canal, glistening like wet coal. It shifted when he flinched. She told herself it was wax, an infection, anything ordinary. But Benjamin signed. No doctors, fingers trembling. They poke. They hurt. That night, she lay awake in the attic room above the garage, ceiling fan rattling. She remembered Luis screaming without sound while the fever cooked him from the inside. She could not let another child disappear into silence. Friday, she watched Benjamin wince through breakfast, oatmeal untouched. By afternoon, he was pale, pressing his palm to the side of his head. Langford was in Charlotte for supplies. Alexander locked in a board meeting. Maria found Benjamin in the library, curled on the window seat. She knelt, heart hammering. Let me look again. He hesitated, then leaned forward. The speck had grown, or maybe the light was better. It pulsed. She fetched a sterling letter opener from the desk, sterilized it with vodka from the wet bar, and whispered a prayer her grandmother taught her in Spanish. Just hold still, Mijo. The library door creaked. Alexander stood there, sleeves rolled, eyes arctic. Step away from my son. Maria straightened, letter opener behind her back. He's in pain, sir. Something's inside his ear. You are not qualified. His voice could slice marble. If anything is wrong, I call the specialists. You do not touch him. Ever. She wanted to argue, to show him the shadow she had seen, but his glare pinned her like a butterfly. She left the letter opener on the blotter and walked out. Each step measured, shame burning her throat. That night the house slept under a blanket of cicadas. Maria slipped downstairs in sock feet, past the grandfather clock that chimed once for 2 a.m. Benjamin's door was ajar, nightlight painting dinosaurs on the wall. He sat up in bed, rocking, hands clamped over his ear. Tears tracked silver paths down his cheeks. She signed, bad. He nodded. She sat beside him, the mattress dipping. I'm going to try. Trust me. He searched her face, then lay on his side, exposing the ear. The thing inside looked larger, slick, alive. Maria's pulse roared in her own ears. She slid the letter opener, now cool from the night air, into the canal with the care of a bomb tech. The tip met resistance, soft, rubbery. She hooked, pulled. It came free with a wet pop, a black bead no bigger than a pea, veined, still quivering. Benjamin gasped, eyes flying open. The clock on the nightstand ticked like gunfire. He clapped hands over his ears, then lowered them, wonder replacing pain. Maria? His voice was gravel over glass, but it was a voice. She dropped the letter opener. You can hear me. He pointed to the window where wind chimes sang. Pretty. Then louder, Dad. Langford burst in first, robe flapping. What in God's name? Maria tried to explain, but he bellowed down the hall. Alexander arrived with 2 security guards, hair tousled, fury absolute. Arrest her. Now. Benjamin screamed, no. She helped. The sound ricocheted off crown molding. Guards hesitated. Alexander's face cycled through rage, confusion, fear. Maria was cuffed in the breakfast room, wrists chafing, while upstairs Benjamin sobbed her name until his voice gave out. At Carolina's medical center, fluorescent lights buzzed like hornets. Pediatric ENT specialists swarmed. Alexander stood behind glass while they irrigated the ear, suctioned, scoped. The lead physician, Dr. Patel, emerged scrubbing her forehead. Hearing bilaterally intact. Whatever was in there caused chronic inflammation and conductive loss. We sent the specimen to pathology. Alexander's knees buckled. Conductive? You're telling me it was mechanical all along. Dr. Patel hesitated. Possibly present since birth. Or introduced later. Hard to say. She slid a folder across. Alexander flipped it open and felt the floor tilt. Internal memos stamped confidential. Maintain profound diagnosis. Harrington account renewable annually. Do not pursue surgical clearance. He read it twice. 10 years of invoices, private jets, hope, sold by the hour. He confronted the hospital administrator in a conference room that smelled of burnt coffee. You kept my son deaf for billing codes. The man adjusted his tie. Corporate decisions above my pay grade. Alexander left before he put a fist through drywall. Back in the pediatric wing, Benjamin sat propped against pillows, coloring a rocket ship. When Alexander entered, the boy looked up. Dad, where's Maria? Alexander sat, took the small hand. I was wrong. She's coming. He radioed security to release her. 20 minutes later Maria walked in, uniform wrinkled, eyes red-rimmed. Benjamin's face split into a grin. You sound like angels, he said, and hugged her so hard the 4-pole rattled. Alexander cleared his throat. How did you know? I watched him touch it every day. No one else looked. Her voice was steady now. I couldn't let another little boy fade away. Dr. Patel returned with pathology. The object was a larval cyst, rare parasitic twin remnant. Likely calcified and dormant until recent growth irritated the canal. Removal restored conduction immediately. She paused. Mr. Harrington, the prior team should have seen this on any decent otoscope exam. Alexander closed his eyes. All the money in the world, and a 26-year-old housekeeper with a letter opener had done what board-certified surgeons missed. He called a press conference in the hospital atrium the next morning. Cameras flashed. He laid the memos on the podium like evidence in a murder trial. For 10 years I paid for miracles that never arrived because profit was the only diagnosis. Today that ends. He announced the Harrington Hearing Fund, free diagnostics and surgery for any child in the Carolinas, no insurance required. Then he turned. The fund's first director is Maria Delgado, because she taught me that listening is an action, not a balance sheet. Reporters swiveled. Maria stood at the back, stunned, until Benjamin tugged her sleeve and whispered loud enough for microphones. "Say yes, Maria." She did. Weeks later the estate felt reborn. French doors stayed open. Cicadas and children's laughter poured in. Benjamin raced barefoot across the lawn shouting the names of birds he was still learning, cardinals, mockingbirds, his own name on the breeze. Maria moved into the guest cottage, her mother's dialysis now covered by the fund. Alexander sold the Tokyo division to seed the endowment, then another, until the foundation outgrew the house. One August evening they sat on the porch swing, fireflies blinking like slow applause. Benjamin leaned against Maria. "Tell the story again." "Which one?" "How you weren't afraid." Maria laughed. "I was terrified." Alexander poured sweet tea. "Bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's refusing to let fear write the ending." Benjamin considered this, then looked up. "Dad, can we visit the kids at the clinic tomorrow?" "First thing." Later, when the boys slept, Alexander found Maria on the dock overlooking the koi pond. Moonlight silvered the water. "I used to think silence was power," he said. "Turns out it was cowardice." Maria skipped a pebble. "Silence is just space waiting for truth." He nodded. "I fired Langford. Hired a new butler who signs fluently. And I'm learning." She smiled. "You're a good student." Inside, Benjamin's window glowed. He had left his night light on again, afraid of the dark now that he knew what sounds hid inside it. Alexander watched the small silhouette turn over, murmur something in dreams. The sound drifted down, soft, perfect. Maria touched his arm. "He'll be okay. We all will." Years passed. The foundation built satellite clinics in Asheville, Greenville, even rural Robeson County. Children who once pressed ears to train tracks to feel vibration now heard their mothers sing. Maria testified before Congress on medical fraud. Alexander funded whistleblower hotlines. Benjamin grew tall, voice steady, collecting stories the way other boys collected baseball cards. On the 10th anniversary, they held a picnic on the estate lawn. Hundreds of families spread blankets under the magnolias. Benjamin, now 20, stood at the microphone. "My dad taught me money can build clinics. Maria taught me love opens ears. Together, they prove the impossible is just a story no one has finished writing yet." Alexander watched from the porch, eyes wet. Maria handed him a glass of tea. "Think we did all right." He clinked her glass. "We listened." That night the house rang with voices, young, old, every accent of the Carolinas. No corner stayed silent. And somewhere in the walls, the old grandfather clock chimed midnight, steady, unafraid, keeping time for a family that had learned the most valuable currency was attention paid in full. If this story stirred something in you, drop a comment below. Tell me, have you ever witnessed greed dressed up as care? Have you seen ordinary people stand against systems too big to fight? Where do you draw the line between protecting the vulnerable and punishing the guilty? Speak your truth. Someone scrolling needs to hear it.